Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Hormone Hackers, your favorite podcast, says me, of all things related to hormones. So, I am your host, Dr. Annette, and we are going to dive into a series of podcasts all about the adrenals. And we are going to call this the Four Horsemen of the Adrenal Apocalypse. Kind of a fun way to embrace what can feel like a little bit of the apocalypse, right, when it comes to the adrenals, especially if the adrenals are quite unhappy. We know that the adrenals are the ultimate stress handling glands, right? So it kind of doesn't matter where the stress comes from. Its job is to handle it. And I think what's interesting about that is that many people will believe that stress is only what they think about when actually there's other things that can also stress the adrenals. And this could include poor sleep. This could be digestive / blood sugar issues. If we're dealing with chronic inflammation, maybe being driven by a type of chronic infection. And then, of course, what we think about. We can think something is a threat or a worry, whether it's real or not, and our adrenal glands are still going to be responding as if it's a real problem. Now, some of you, I think when it comes to adrenals, that at times we get a little bit jaded in that, like, yeah, everybody has stress, like we just sort of accept it, and almost in a way feel like we don't have any power to change it. And I think that is very true when we look at what comes up in, I would say, our symptoms in as far as modern medicine or traditional medicine. Because a lot of times, and I've talked about this in previous episodes talking about the thyroid, but a lot of times we will feel like that what we have going on is a thyroid issue when in fact it is actually an adrenal issue first. But if we don't nourish them, we don't make them more resilient, given enough time, it's also going to become a thyroid issue. And also the adrenals have the ability to hijack our cycle. So we can miss a period. We could have a shortened cycle. And when we get into menopause, stress usually becomes the major trigger when we are dealing with hot flashes, night sweats, disrupted sleep, disrupted blood sugar. Adrenals are really kind of at the heart of it. And I will always say that the adrenals are the ovaries of menopause. So when you kind of take that all into account, they are so much more than the gland that is responsible for fight or flight or rest and digest. They are the glands that do not leave anything in the body untouched. Not digestion, not blood sugar, inflammation, part of our reproductive health, part of our skin health, our hair, our bones, our mental health, our focus and attention. There's so many things that they are involved in. And I always want to honor that they are part of really of our whole body. But I always feel like they just kind of get pushed aside. And part of that is there's really not drugs for them. And this is the beauty of herbs. This is the beauty of whole food nutrition, things that actually restore health and resiliency. So don't be discouraged by the adrenal apocalypse because we are going to navigate this together and we're going to come up with some solutions for you. All right. So starting off, we're going to first start with sleep. Sleep is both the sometimes the toughest one to address, but it also becomes one of the most important. When we have poor sleep, this can impact our blood sugar, our blood pressure, increase our risk really of all comorbidities. It can have an impact on our mental health, on our focus and attention. Like there's so many things about it. When we sleep is the best time for our body to go through. I mean, really, when you think about autophagy, it's a time that we're not eating. It's a time when the liver is going through its own cycle of cleansing and sort of just like this restorative aspect, of our life that needs to happen. And so much of the time we either spend it disrupted, we spend it, not as a priority. We will think that, oh, I'll catch up to my sleep later. When in fact, that's not true. Sleep debt is a sleep debt. You don't actually get to get it back. once it's gone, it's over. And the irony is, I was reading a book called Why We Sleep, and he brings up an example of animals, right? You don't see a dog or a cat, or those are the most common animals I've been around, but if you think about it, they don't skip naps. In fact, they spend probably a lot more time with their sleeping than we do. But yet we will forego sleep, whatever, to try to get just one more thing done. So I do think it is one of our most important things that we can work on. Now, the complexity of it is there's a lot of different things that come into play with that. And I also look at what are the sleep challenges. So, first off, to start with, we know that we need at least 7 hours of total sleep. That now, if you go to bed and you wake up, go to the bathroom, and then go back to sleep right away, as long as you're getting a total of 7 hours. And what recent studies have shown is that women need closer to 8 to 9 hours. Now, if you're the person that your whole life you needed 10 hours, well, don't change that. But when we start thinking that we're okay, or like we brag, I've heard some people, and usually it's older people bragging like, oh, I only need 5 hours sleep. Just because you can get by on the 5 hours sleep doesn't mean that your body is actually getting by on it. And again, this is what it leads into, this more of, so anything less than 7 hours is insufficient sleep. We get less than 5 hours of sleep, now we're getting what we call sleep deprivation. And that's when it definitely becomes more serious. It's hard enough when we are not going with our circadian rhythm. We know people that, work a night shift, or what was always been dubbed the graveyard shift. Now think about that. Part of that was, I guess, you're working when everybody else should be sleeping. Maybe that's a little bit of it. But also, people notoriously that worked the graveyard shift had a shortened lifespan. And those that did this rotating, it was much worse. I would say on that the other thing we want to consider is looking at our chronological sleep type. And most of us think of the night owl and the lark. Well, a true night owl would be the person that would stay up till 2:30, 3 a.m. and probably then sleep until 12 o'clock or something like that. Whereas our lark, our morning person, they kind of basically wake up with the sun. So they might wake up 6 a.m. or something like that, but they're also ready to go to bed, around 8 o'clock or so. And then there's a certain part of the population that is in the middle. We're not true night owls and we're not true morning people. And yes, your host, Dr. Annette, is in the middle. I am so not a morning person. I feel like my creative flow is always better in the afternoon and early evenings, which is pretty typical with that. But I'm not quite a true night owl. What's interesting, if you go back to history and you think of before we had alarms and securities and things like that, if you were like a small community that was kind of, you kept watch for each other, it's really great that you would have the night owls, the morning people, and the people that are in between. So there wouldn't be a whole lot of time when someone couldn't be alert or taking care of things. Fast forward, we don't have those issues. And then we got into a society that really, really favored the morning person. I mean, there's many jokes, if you're not up at 6 a.m., I think it's like the military, they've got more done by 8 a.m. than anybody else, whatever, right? But we do favor that, which can be a challenge for a true night owl to try to switch that. But still, the amount of sleep that we need is going to be really important. And there's a lot of studies done that show, the amount of sleep that we need as a baby, and then it changes a little bit. And then actually what's interesting, when we get in our teenage years, this is a big growth time, very kind of like when we were itty bitty just born. So you'll see that teenagers will start needing more sleep, which many times makes parents very angry because they're like, oh my gosh, all they want to do is sleep all day. Well, it's kind of what their body is telling them to do. And also, the benefit when we go back to just for all of us sleeping at night is a time when our growth hormone surges, which is so important when we think about even just aging gracefully, or, not having accelerated aging, however you want to put it. We have to have that sleep for that growth hormone and so forth. And then there's other hormones that shift. So we want to kind of just embrace that. So kind of pay attention maybe to really, what feels good to you. Now, how do you track this? Sometimes this to me has always kind of been a little bit of a challenge. I've had my, phone face down, next to me, and I could know that I didn't have a great night's sleep, and it would be like, "Oh, your sleep scores whatever." And I'm like, there is just no way. But I also don't want the phone next to me. I know many people put their phones in other rooms and different things like that. For me, one of the ways that I started tracking my sleep was I got an Aura ring. And I know some people have like an Apple Watch and different things like that. I don't really care for the Apple Watch because I just don't like anything on my wrist. But I actually got the Aura ring when I was going through menopause because I recognized where my sleep was off and I wanted to have a better idea of what was happening with my sleep. Now, if I'm being really honest, sleep was off prior to that, especially when I was traveling and teaching a lot. But now I wanted to have more details. What I liked about the Aura Ring for me, anyways, was that it could show restlessness, times that I was awake, also give time into deep sleep, REM, light sleep. So I could see that if I was going through the cycles, because you are supposed to cycle through. Deeps usually happens first, and then we can go to the REM, and then we go to light sleep. And deep, and ideally we would get through maybe 3 cycles in a night. Some people don't get enough deep sleep. And when the REM tends to be where we dream, light sleep's a little tricky because it doesn't feel restful. Like you feel like you're awake, um, but you're not truly awake, right? But that was one of the things that I liked about the Aura Ring or something like that that helps judge it. And then it could also pick up body temperature, my heart rate variability. So the other component for me with the Aura Ring was also seeing if I ate late, did that affect my sleep? Or if I exercised late, even if I was, out, wedding and, we're drinking, we're dancing or what have you, I was able to see other things that would influence my sleep score as well. So for me, that was one of the ways that I started tracking it. And again, I liked it because it's just, it's on my hand. It is not bothersome, right? And it can pick up, and you can always put it on airplane mode for those of you that are trying to like reduce any of like the Bluetooth stuff technology. You can leave it on airplane mode until you're ready just to download all that information. It keeps collecting it, and it tracks it over time. One of the things that they started doing is giving a marker for if you have a sleep debt. So it would tell me if I have a sleep debt. It would also keyed into what my chronological sleep type was. I just kind of put it out there. I don't get any money from Aura. If you guys decide to get the ring, just for me, it's been one of my favorite ways to track it. And there again, like I said, there are some other ones that are going on. When we look at, I want to talk just briefly about the types of insomnia. Okay, because knowing what's going on can be really important. There is a person that just can't fall asleep. They can't go to sleep. Then if someone tells me, well, I can't go to sleep, why? Is it just, your body feels restless? Is it because you can't shut your mind down? Sometimes people just lay there. It's not that they're worried or thinking about anything. It just can't go down. Sometimes when we have that going on, this could relate to higher levels of cortisol at night, which reduces the sleep pressure called adenosine. It could be a lack of melatonin. Maybe there's light in the room, things that are affecting our melatonin production, things like that. Then there is a person that can get to sleep but can't stay asleep. And if they're waking up, then I'm looking at, okay, do you wake up at a certain time every night? Someone wakes up at a certain time every night. I'm going to kind of look at an organ clock and see if there is a clue there. For instance, if someone always wakes up between 1 and 3 a.m., that could tie back into maybe the time of the liver. So they need extra liver support before, maybe either into the protocol, could be a tea that they drink, things that has like schizandra, dandelion root in it, globe artichoke, milk thistle, something like that. So I do look at the time. What if or let's say, what if they wake up almost like in an alarm state, like you wake up almost in a panic, or the time is very random. Like sometimes they wake up at 1, another time they wake up at 4. It's all over the place. And many times they wake up, they struggle to go back to sleep. That could be an indication of what we call nocturnal hypoglycemia. So it could be just a little bit of a drop of blood sugar, which makes the body surge adrenaline and cortisol to rapidly bring it up. But that surge of hormones would wake you up, right? And almost could make it feel like you're going to have a small panic attack because of the adrenaline surge. It also, if you're in the throes of maybe perimenopause, menopause, that surge due to blood sugar could cause a hot flash or a night sweat, which really didn't have anything to do about the hormones themselves shifting and changing. Especially when someone's 2 or 3 years into menopause and beyond, you there's no reason at all you should still be having hot flashes. So then I go to look at, what's going on with the adrenals, but very importantly, what's going on with blood sugar. I really, and I'm talk more about that one on the next podcast of the, adrenal apocalypse, about the blood sugar and digestion. But that is the other component that I look at is, does someone wake up very random? How do they feel when they wake up? Then I look at, well, when was your last meal? We get it into this idea, this absolute obsession to be as thin as possible. We start starving ourselves. And if you don't have good blood sugar control and you cut yourself off from food at, say, 6 o'clock, and you can't maintain those levels throughout the night, hormones are going to surge to make sure you wake up. And you're not really doing yourself a favor, because cortisol surges, which cause your glucose to go up, antagonize insulin, causes fat storage, and all this other stuff, and you just could have simply had a snack before going to bed. Then the other type, now I want to point out, as I'm talking about these different types of insomnia, you can have a combination. You could struggle to go to sleep, then get to sleep, and then still wake up at random times. But the other one is also not feeling rested. Um, every once in a while, I will have someone that does sleep through the night and doesn't wake up rested. Mostly, not saying always, that is usually going to make me really take a closer look at what's going on, with the adrenals. So that is, kind of looking at the overview of the types of sleep issues. Okay, so what do we do, right? Taking a sedative is not good long term. I mean, I know they're out there, the Unisoms, the Ambiens, those do not help you with sleep. They sedate you to sleep, which means your sleep quality is not going to be great. And the interesting thing is, if you actually look at the side effects of those, that actually can cause insomnia. So for many people, when they first start on them, they think it's great, it's amazing. And then they start having insomnia, so they increase the dose. And they increase the dose, and some of them are like, oh, well, you can't be on that high of a dose. And I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't have kept increasing that dose on them in the first place. So it knocks you out, but it doesn't help with like quality sleep at all. So it's not exactly the way to go. I mean, I understand why people do it, but it's not great. Same thing with using things like Xanax or benzodiazepine. Those are, for one, are incredibly addictive. So that's a slippery slope. Can also make you feel very groggy, more sedated, even in the morning. And again, drugs are never going to fix it. I had one patient one time using Tylenol PM as an example, or Excedrin, one of the NSAIDs with the PM. Now, she was doing it for sleep and also for pain. The problem was those can cause gastritis, they can cause bleeding anywhere in the body. So guess what? She gave herself gastritis. She got reflux as a result of it. Her blood pressure, because it will cause an elevation of blood pressure. I mean, it was a hot mess. And she didn't tell me because she was embarrassed about it. So for a while, I'm trying to figure out, well, oh my gosh, where did this blood pressure issue come from, and so on and so forth. All that to say, if you're listening to this, be honest with the person you're working with because they can't help you if you're not honest with them. All right. That's my tiny little rant about when you work with a practitioner. So we have these common things out there. So what could we do? Like what would be a really good natural way to do this? A lot of people will choose magnesium. And I think that's great. I'm going to lean more towards using magnesium that comes from plants, things like Swiss chard and buckwheat. Those kind of be where I would lean. But for the most part, a lot of people are going to just get some benefit from magnesium. Now, if I have to look at it from one perspective of what can it do for the body? Well, it can help with muscle relaxation. It can help normalize cortisol. It can help with blood sugar. So just in some very simple ways, that is why some people get the benefit, from magnesium. So it's certainly a great option. Some will do melatonin, and I think in really small amounts because as we age, we don't make as much melatonin. That is a possibility of adding it in. On the other side of that, we could do chase tree, which naturally increases melatonin and can kind of help us feel calm and is a dopamine agonist, so it can actually help elevate dopamine. So this would be a natural alternative to melatonin. But I would still, if someone came to me, I'd still say, I'd rather you do melatonin than Ambien, right? Or Xanax or something like that. So it's kind of like that good, better, best. Some of the other herbs that come to mind, valerian is like the ultimate sleep herb. It is for any type of insomnia, can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep, and don't have restorative sleep. There's a lot of different formulas that I use, and valerian will be a part of it. The tricky part about valerian is that it can take at least 2 weeks to really feel the benefit of it. And many people will quit too soon. They'll just sort of give up. So you gotta allow this to have time. Passion flower will be in various formulas that just has, and a lot of what we see in these is just more calming to the nervous system to kind of let you feel more relaxed. A lot of the herbs that are good for sleep are also good for anxiety, and that's kind of a nice thing. Even you could take these things during the day to set you up for good sleep and also honoring that sleep circadian rhythm. So if you take valerian throughout the day, maybe because you are on edge and you're kind of jacking up your cortisol because you're stressed, if you took it at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's not going to make you fall asleep. It doesn't, because it's not a drug. It's not like taking Ambien that's going to knock you out. It's more about supportive. So kind of keep that in mind that if you've been doing something and you're just doing it before bed, maybe you need to set yourself up for success. So things like passion flower, lemon balm, chamomile. We could have California poppy. We could use skull cap. Some of these herbs, I look at, what's keeping someone awake. If someone can't quiet their brain down, I might use things such as skull cap, saffron, St. John's wort, and schizandra. Kava can be a really nice one as long as you get one that is a water extracted, so we know that it's safe for the liver. That can have a calming effect, help with muscles, help with just overall feeling of tension. So the kind of chamomile, what if someone has a lot of like gas and colic? Well, use chamomile. It works for that and also is supportive for just like calming the nervous system and helping with sleep. So for me, when I start working with someone, I want to figure out where they are in that disrupted sleep. Is it they can't shut their brain down? Is it because they're really tense and tight? Are they dealing with some pain? Are we dealing with some blood sugar? Kind of diving in to figure out. Now you can do some of this on your own to kind of figure out, but when you're stuck, right, this is where a practitioner can really help out. Even there's some formulas that will use L-theanine, which can help the body calm down, help have better quality sleep, and sometimes you'll see that in combination with some other herbs. It really is just finding the what works for you and what's going on with like your sleep situation. Ironically, many times I feel like it's a lot easier to correct uh, men when they have disrupted sleep, which I swear to God, I feel like most of the time they don't. They're like, oh, I'm tired. And in 10 seconds, they're asleep. And then we all want to throttle them. I feel like women are a little more challenging, probably because of the hormones. Depending on what's going on with our hormones, what's going on with, we're more sensitive to the effects of cortisol and blood sugar. Not saying that men cannot have that, because certainly they can. But I just always find when I'm working with women, I'm like trying to get like super creative. Do they need more minerals, to help them to sleep? Do we need a combination of minerals and herbs? Altogether, it doesn't matter. We just need to have that sleep. And here's the thing, I know personally, sometimes I sleep really well, and other times it's a struggle. And I'm like, all right, I'll go take some magnesium, or, for me, maybe some liquid herbs to help with that. Now, on the other thing that is all of our responsibility, this is sleep hygiene. Okay. So sleep hygiene means, what do you do to get ready for bed? And you've got to figure out what works best. The worst thing you can do is when you struggle with sleep, the worst thing you can do is to sit there and be on your phone scrolling. That just like, it's like a constant hit to the brain every time a new video comes on, and then they're all 30 seconds to a minute. And sometimes it ends up being doom scrolling. So you get yourself all worked up about what is being portrayed on social media while you're trying to go to bed, right? So generally, excessive light, flipping with the screens, the TV, are not going to be a great way to go off to sleep, right? So usually putting the phone down at least an hour before you lay down. And you got to kind of play with it. I had one patient, she needed to set the phone aside for 2 hours before she wanted to go to bed. And that seemed to be that sweet spot to help her go to sleep. And I just want to be honest, I've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of getting into playing a game or something, and then so mad at myself because it was like, oh, it'll help me wind down. Oh, who I was kidding. It didn't help me wind down. It wound me up. And then I struggled more with sleep. It's so bad. One time I literally was dreaming about the game that I was playing, and I'm playing in my head. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I got to stop this. Right? I was like, that is so crazy. You can read, but I mean, I think if you read on a Kindle or your phone, you kind of do that more low light. I think that can be helpful. They say it's better to read a book than it's like, then you got to turn the lights off and so forth. But reading can be good, or especially if you read something really boring. Sometimes we get too involved in a book. But you got to just like look at what you're doing sleep hygiene wise. Does it feel good to have a sleepy time tea an hour before going to bed? Some people taking a hot shower makes them feel more relaxed. Someone else, it might make them feel more awake. Don't try to figure out what works for you. Don't try to be what someone else is, if that makes sense, because that may not be the best thing for you. But I think really being honest with what is disrupting your sleep. I think that, when I have different noises and stuff around that are not consistent to me, or if it's too quiet, and I don't think I was always that way, but I think, after growing up and living in a city and then having one ear open when your kids are little, I like a sound machine that automatically goes off like 20-25 minutes. The other thing that I have used is on my phone, under, like, I think it's just an Apple phone, on my sleep cycle, which is this big orange button, right there. On that one, it can play a story. So you get this male or female just telling this very chill story that probably they last usually like 20 to 25 minutes. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, kind of nice. And then I just usually, that has helped me fall asleep. I'm not gonna lie though, one time I kept falling asleep in the middle of it and I really wanted to know how it ended. So I fast forward, which is just silly, but sometimes we gotta do those things. But once I knew how it ended, I was like, then I don't worry so much anymore. I know people that will put a book in and then fall asleep to that. You just want to make sure it's something that you can set a timer on that will automatically turn off. Because if you don't, and that sound or the book reading is continue to go, that can actually disrupt your sleep and wake you back up or keep you from going into the deep sleep. So yeah, I think we covered it all. Okay, so remember, you've got to get at least 7 hours of total sleep. Better to get 8 to 9. Pay attention to what your circadian rhythm is and honor it as closely as you can, depending on your work schedule. Remember that you do not get to make up for sleep that's lost. So don't think that the weekend's going to be your catch up. And the longer you go into a sleep debt, the more there can be health consequences. Find ways to track it if you want, if you need to, using something, like an Oura ring, or if you like wearing a watch. I still think the less electronics we have around us, really the better, but that can be helpful. And then, even just setting yourself up for good sleep, that's that sleep hygiene. Maybe it's helpful to pray, to write a gratitude list, whatever it is that puts you in a better space to be able to drift off to sleep. And then when you need it, there are supplements to help. If you think it is a blood sugar thing, try having a small protein-based snack before you go to bed. It could honestly be just a spoonful of nut butter. If magnesium, you could try the magnesium. If you're not really sure in the land of herbs, I really, really encourage you to work with someone who knows their way around herbs, and you're not just buying pretty much some over-the-counter junk, or a lot of times they don't even use the right part of the plant. So it doesn't work. And then you just think herbs in general don't work, when the reality was you weren't even getting what would have been any good. But go through all of that and just decide, set your attention out that you are going to make sleep a priority, because it is the ultimate anti-aging activity that we could do. When we don't get enough sleep, we have accelerated aging. So why not? Why not get that adequate sleep and make sure that it is truly restorative? Okay, so that's it for this episode of the Four Horsemen of the Adrenal Apocalypse. Thank you so much. If you like this, let me know, share it. It's all good. Help everybody else out. And then the next episode, which should come out next month, will be on blood sugar and digestion.